Welcome to the Wealth Embodied podcast. I'm your host, Brianna Faringer, an attorney, spiritual guide, and wealth activator. I'm here to help you align your mindset for abundance and break through any glass ceilings with money. If you're ready to embrace your highest calling, manifest with more ease, and create a life that feels lighter and more aligned, then let's dive in. Hello, I hope that you are having a wonderful day so far. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast episode. We are going to be talking about attachment and ego and how that affects whether and how abundance comes into your life. So, this is a really fun topic for me. And I say fun only because I have been dealing with it for the last several years. And it is a topic that's really important to me because attachment is something that I have struggled with my whole life, and I didn't even realize it until I did a session with somebody several years ago. I had done it was a session with a spiritual guide. And one of the things that came out of that session was that one of my life's greatest lessons to learn was non-attachment. And it was so interesting to me because when I heard that, I immediately understood what it meant and where like that was coming from. And I think we tend to think of like attachment like to people, but attachment is really attachment to anything, attachment to ideas, beliefs, identities of ourselves, attachment to outcomes. It relates to everything, honestly, I think, but it tends to be used a lot in like the relationship world. I'm not in that world. Like I don't deal with relationship styles or anything like that, but attachment is something that I have worked on so much for the last few years because when I learned that it was one of my greatest life's lessons that I needed to learn, I immediately was like, oh, and I could see where it had happened in my life. And it tended to happen, well, it happened with everything, honestly, because I was trying to control outcomes, which is really kind of when attachment is coming up, is when we're trying to control things, which is our ego, right? Getting in the way of everything. But for me, it was coming up. I could see it very clearly with relationships, right? And so I am not this way anymore. I've worked very hard to get to where I'm at, but for the large majority of my life, I was a very untrusting person. I didn't trust really anyone other than myself. There would be people along the way that I did trust, and there weren't very many. But when I would find those people, I would attach to them because I felt so safe with them, right? I felt so unsafe around most people, and I was so untrusting and skeptical that when I did feel safe, I was like, oh, I'm going to attach to this, right? And this is not in like a weird single white female kind of way either. I'm talking about like, I realized I would form these really, really close bonds with people, or at least as close as I could be at that time, because I was, didn't really know how to be in relationships or to express my feelings. But when I did have these people that I trusted, I would attach to them. And then when things would change, it would feel very devastating to me. Like I had a really good friend in my early 20s who moved away. And I remember feeling like it was going through a death, right? Like, because I was so saddened by it, and I was so sad about how things were going to change and how my life was going to change. And like, oh my God, this is one of the few people that I found that I truly align with and resonate with. And what am I going to do now that she's not here? And right, it was all this like self-pity kind of stuff, like feeling sorry for myself because I just didn't let people in, right? And so when I did, I really attached to them. And then you get very disappointed when things change, when it's something that we're attached to that changes. And so when I started to recognize this pattern in my life, I was like, oh, I don't want that anymore. Like I'm like, I don't need that anymore. And I've done a lot of work around non-attachment. And it's very, very important in like if you want to have abundance, honestly, or if you're doing any sort of like mindset work, because when you can learn to become neutral around things, by the way, being neutral around things doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you don't want things. It doesn't mean you don't have excitement about things. It just means you're not so attached to them that if it doesn't turn out the way that you would plan it or you think it's going to, your life is not going to be devastated, right? The reality is almost nothing goes the way that we plan. Even if we don't recognize that, we will create scenarios for ourselves that make it seem like things are not changing because people don't like change. A lot of people don't like change. It's very hard for them. And so they will create these scenarios where they feel like they're able to control outcomes. When really you can't control really anything. You can control your beliefs, your thoughts, and your responses to things that happen. That's it. Everything else is out of your hands. There are so many other people moving around the world. There are so many other energies, unseen energies, physical energies, intervening events, things that come in and change the complete way that we thought things were going to go, right? But we will create scenarios where we think that we are controlling everything. And this is really just where attachment comes in. If this is something that you do, please, please, please do not take this as like you're doing something wrong. This is not what this is. It's not about doing things wrong. It's about, okay, this is something that might have served you in some fashion, but it is costing you something. And what it is costing you may be far more than what you recognize. So, attachment comes in a lot in money because people will get so attached to certain outcomes or certain things happening as it relates to money. And then when it doesn't happen, they will be very disappointed, right? It's okay to feel disappointed. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's about when you can detach from things, when you can not have so much energy connected to what you think has to happen or what you want to have happen, it frees up energy for all of the great things that could happen that you can't even possibly conceptualize to come in. Because here's the thing. If you knew everything and you knew all of the right ways of doing everything, your life would be fucking amazing. And maybe it is. If it is, I am happy for you. For a lot of people, what they are doing, it's not that it's not working, it's just that there's a better or different way of doing it. And trying to have neutrality around everything in your life is important, but it's particularly important as it relates to money. Because the thing is, money has energy, just like everything else. That's science. That's not me making that up, right? That's comes from Albert Einstein. Everything is energy. Everything. Things we can see, things we cannot see. Money, people view it as an object. And nowadays, it's really just digital. It's something that we don't even really see. It has energy. It's just that its energy is neutral. We as humans have attached such significance to money because of what it does for us and what we need to use it for. We create these weird energies around money. Money is neutral. It wants to come to you. It's not trying to avoid you. It's not trying to evade you. We are constantly doing things that are blocking it from coming to us. And one of those things is being so attached to how it can come to you, you know, the different ways that you believe are the only ways that money can come to you, the things that you think are available to you. There's just so many things around attachment. And I'm going to give you some examples, right? So this makes a little bit more sense, but it can be hard not to be attached to something that you really want. And the reality is you can want things in your life without dictating the only way that it has to happen, right? So just for example, I'm a lawyer. I went to law school. That was something that I wanted to do. Did I end up going to law school? Yes, I did. I did not control the outcome. I did not control anything that happened along the way, because what I'll tell you is, even though I went to law school, the path that I took was so dramatically different from anything I could have ever imagined. I couldn't have thought it up myself. And that's the thing. There is so much available to us that we can't see or conceptualize, because we are so used to things happening in certain ways, or because we've had evidence come into our life that's like, this is how this goes. And then we're like, well, this is how this is going to work. No, there's infinite ways that things can come to you, right? There was an infinite number of ways that I could have like ended up graduating from law school. I ended up going to a school outside of Los Angeles, in a place I never in a million years would have thought I would live. I was planning on going to law school in Colorado. Circumstances at that time were such that it didn't work out. I did a completely different area of law. I'm a tax lawyer. I never thought I was going to go to law school and become a tax attorney. I can tell you that. I never knew that my path was going to be what it is. Am I a lawyer? Yeah. But did I control like the outcome and how it all happened? No. I made plans along the way and things changed, right? And that's the thing, is that we often don't realize, like, because we are many times getting what we want, but how we get there takes a completely different path. And that's really the essence of becoming neutral, is not worrying about the how, right? We get so caught up in like, how am I going to do this? Like, if I want to be a millionaire, how am I going to do it? What are all the steps I have to take? When the reality is, you don't actually have to do that. I mean, you do have to take steps, you do have to take action, but if you set a plan for like, this is how I'm going to do it, keep in mind that if you are attached to that being the only way that it can happen in your life, you are blocking out all of the potential ways that it could happen. It could happen like that. Your life could change overnight, but we tell ourselves it has to take time. I have to do X to make money. I have to work hard. It has to take years before I can get to that. What are all the other thoughts that are running through our minds, right? This happens a lot with money. We become so attached to ideas of how it has to come to us, ideas of how we're going to get it, how everything is going to go. And when we are caught up in the how and the end result, it will prevent you from getting what you want. So I'll just give you an example. And this is not like an earth-shattering example, by the way. When we're talking about money, I will probably say this in every episode. It's not about the money. Right? It's about our beliefs around everything, ourselves, our relationships, how we feel about ourselves and other people, the things that we do. It all affects money, right? And all of these little things that are happening in our day affect money. So I'm about to give you an example that's not some earth-shattering like example as it relates to the amount of money. It's not about the money. It's about what happened in this particular situation. Okay, so rewind a year ago. I had to get my HVAC, my whole unit in my condo replaced, because the air conditioning went out. It went out in like the end of July, when it was like 96 degrees every day, right? That's always when it happens. It was a very expensive replacement that I was not expecting. That's beside the point, because that's actually probably a whole other episode that I could do, but it was an unexpected expense. It was a lot of money, and it arose right after I quit my job. So I was like, what the fuck is happening? But one of the things was, when I bought this unit, I was supposed to be getting a rebate from Excel, which is our local energy company. Most people probably have Excel, but in Denver, it's Excel. They were supposed to be giving me a rebate, right? Like, when you install new energy saving equipment in your home, you're usually eligible for some form of a rebate, right? The company that I had that did the install for my HVAC quoted me a price that included the rebate with Excel. Right. So they're like, oh, this is going to be $14,000. But I get the bill and it's like 15,000, which I'm like, oh yeah, it's an extra $1,000. Why is that the case? And they're like, oh, because you're going to get an Excel rebate. It's only $1,000, right? We're not talking about loads of money, but this is a very good example of attachment. So I had quit my job, And I did have money saved up, but $1,000 at that time, I was like, oh, I could really use that $1,000, right? And I was expecting it to come. And I think I had already planned what I was going to do with it, right? Because this is like still how my mind works, even though I try not to think about money too much. I was like, I'm going to get this $1,000 and I'm going to use it for this, right? And I had it all mapped out. Well, I ended up having the hardest time getting this money. And it was because I know I was attached to it coming to me and I was expecting it to come from Excel. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what happened. I filled out the rebate application, which, by the way, no, I think the HVAC company filled it out because it had all this technical stuff in it. So they submitted the application to Excel, but then Excel wrote back to me and they kept telling me that my application had been rejected. And it contained all of this technical reasoning in it that even for me, who I'm consider myself to be a reasonably intelligent person and I can figure things out, I was like, this is way, way out of my like expertise. Like I couldn't even figure this out. It was all this technical stuff that related to the equipment and how much energy it put out and all this stuff, right? And I'm like, no, 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 I'm not going to do this. So I kept contacting the company that sold me the unit and that installed it and telling them, hey, Excel rejected this application. I don't know what to do. And I kept getting this woman who gave zero shits about helping me. I'm telling you, maybe she just like didn't, maybe she was over this job. I don't know where she was in her life, but I would call her and I could tell like she does not care to try to help me figure this out. Right. And so I just was getting so frustrated with it. Right. And I was having this like energy of like, I could feel it in my body. Like I was getting so mad because I'm like, it's $1,000. Like I'm entitled to it. Just do it so I can get it. Right. And then I was like, I was like, you know what? This is too much hassle for me. I was like, I can earn $1,000 another way. I was like, I'll just figure out how to get it. Cause I was like, the amount of time it's taking me is not worth it. And I was like, I'm not going to be frustrated over this. Right. And I was just like, I'm going to let it go. I'm like, if I don't get that $1,000, I'm going to find it another way. Right. I'm like, I'm just going to detach from it. Like, if I don't get that $1,000, it's going to come in some other way. Okay. Within a week, I was getting a message. It was a message, an intuitive message that I was getting that I was going to get a check for this money. And it just kind of came to me. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to get a check. Great. And I thought to myself, well, if I get a check from Excel or whatever, that'd be awesome. Maybe it'll get worked out. But I'm not going to put any more energy into it because I'm too attached to the outcome, right? It was pissing me off. And I could feel it. Like you can feel it in your body when you have this energy around something. Okay. So I had just been like, whatever happens, happens. Within a couple days after I'd gotten that message about the money coming to me, somebody else from the HVAC company called me and she was like, I am so sorry. So and so that you were dealing with doesn't work here anymore. And I think you have been trying to get this resolved and nobody was getting back to you. And she was like, I talked to our management company and we just want to send you $1,000 check. And I was like, yes, there it is, right? I released the energy around it and it came in anyway. It came in a completely different way than I was expecting. I never would have imagined that the HVAC company would call me and be like, we want to give you $1,000 back. So she called me and she said, I just want to confirm your mailing address so I can mail you this check. And we are also going to send you a form that says if we get this rebate back from Excel, we can keep it. I'm like, this is literally the best thing that could have happened because now I don't have to fight with Excel. I don't have to keep contacting the HVAC company and they're just going to send me the check. Heck yes. Like, right. That's an example of attachment. Right. I wanted that money. I felt like I was entitled to it. Once I let go of okay, I'm just not going to give this any more of that like energy, that like negative energy that I can feel. And I just know that it's going to come in. And right, I wasn't even expecting it to come in from the HVAC company. I was expecting it. I'm like, I'll get $1,000 somewhere else. It's just going to come in. And I just knew it. Right. I've done a lot of money mindset work, which is why I had this feeling, by the way. But that's a good example of being attached to two things. I had the same thing happen to a client that I was working through my money mindset program with. It was about a year ago also. she was going through a very hard time in her life. And she was also going to be coming through a period of time where she was going to be living on limited funds because she wasn't going to be working. And there was money coming from a place that she was depending on. And she had this energy around it. And even I could feel it. As we were going through it, she had this energy around it that was like, I have to have this money. It was like, this has to happen. Right. It was a very similar scenario where it was like she was entitled to this money. It had to go through a lot of approvals. Somebody had to process it at her work. It was like all of these things, right? But she was dependent on it. And she had told herself, I can't live without this money. Like, how am I going to make this work if I don't get this? And she had attached so much energy to it that she was blocking it from coming through. And she went through the same kind of situation where she kept having these really frustrating conversations with the people who were supposed to be doing the approval process. They kept rejecting it for these reasons that seemed really minor. And then she had to keep going back to her doctor and getting them to write more notes. It was like, it was a whole thing, right? And I knew, and as she ended up learning, it was she had attached so much energy to getting that money, she was preventing it from coming through. We stopped working together shortly after that, not for any reason, just because her program ended. So I don't actually know what happened with that money, but one of the things that we talked about was just releasing the energy with it, right? Just being like, okay, because you attaching energy to it or you attaching like this has to happen isn't changing the outcome. She didn't have control over that outcome. The people who are going through the approval process did. And I know people are like, well, how does energy affect that? Energy affects everything. Energy is everything. We are energy. Everything that we are doing, right, in our minds, our thoughts are creating our reality. And so when we are having these thoughts of like, I'm so attached to this outcome, this is the only way it can come through. What am I going to do if this doesn't happen? You're actually energetically attracting that into your life. Worrying is like praying for what you don't want to happen. Right. And so this is why like attachment to things is so it blocks abundance from coming through, but it also creates scenarios for people where they feel so disappointed when things don't go the way that they want. And by the way, things never really go the way that we want. If you give up the how it's going to happen, if you're just like, I want this thing, like I want this money, but I'm not going to attach any energy to it. And if things like start to feel like weird, like, like it's not coming through, don't like get this energy of like, I have to hold on tighter to this idea, right? It's about just getting neutrality around it and being like, okay, I want that money. If it doesn't come through in the way that I think, it's going to come through some other way. And I will tell you that it always does. I have people who will tell me this. Like I had another client that I was working with, and she will have this scenario where she's like, she works on commission. And so she was planning out like, okay, when I get this commission, I'm going to do X, right? She's constantly playing this like, this is where this is going to go game. This creates a situation where things are not going to go your way because you have this energy associated with it. Like this money has to be used here, right? And she would say to me, like, I would get this check, and then like one of my sons would have to go to the hospital for something, right? We'd have to go to like an emergency room visit. And then I'd have to use that money for that. And then she's like, but then I would always be like, okay, like it's not going to come from that. And then I would get another deal that came through that I wasn't even expecting. That's not a coincidence. Everything is happening for you. People are always like, oh, that's just a coincidence, or oh, look at this amazing thing that happened. It's happening because life is happening for you. It's happening because the universe is supporting you. It's happening because when your thoughts allow yourself to go to a place where you don't worry about the how, they can come in any number of ways. That can be money, that can be opportunities, it could be clients, it could be business partners, collaborators, it could be relationships, it could be people that are supportive of you moving to the next phase of your life, to the next highest version of yourself. You don't have any idea how all of the things could go. So this really comes down to trust, which a lot of people have a hard time doing. I just told you I had a very hard time trusting anybody or anything. I am now very different, right? I'm still discerning about people that I give my energy to. I'm discerning about people that I work with. I'm very discerning about who I have in my world. But I trust myself because I've done so much work. I've done so much mindset work. I trust the universe because I have done so much mindset work. And I know that when I change the way I think about things, the universe provides me with evidence that shows me that that mindset is working and that I can get what I want. Right. And I trust that things are going to be better than what I could imagine them to be. Because if I knew all the answers, my life would be great. Same with you, right? Like we have these ideas about how things have to go. It has to be this or it has to be that. It has to be A or it has to be B. Like this is the way that this has to happen. And the thing is, you can move through life in that fashion, being like, okay, I'm going to try this thing, and these are the steps I'm going to take to get there. But just being open to the possibility that it's not going to go that way and that you can be surprised. People don't like to be surprised. I was one of these people. I'd be like, oh, I don't like surprises. Now I love them. I ask the universe, how are you going to surprise me today? Because I love when stuff comes into my life that I'm not expecting and it's awesome. I'm like, oh, cool. I just got this free thing. I wasn't expecting that. Yes. Right. I got a free massage last week. I called that in, by the way. Again, I'm not saying this to brag. I say this because I want to provide evidence for people that your life can be much easier and it can be different. If you allow things to come to you without being so attached to how it has to happen and what exactly it has to be, things in your life will be so much easier and better. Better things are going to come in, things that you could never imagine. If you heard people say this, like, I could have never imagined my life would be like this. Yes, that's right. Because if you just let the universe bring you the things that you want, if you change your mindset about things and you know that in your body, your energy is going to attract to you the things in your life that are supportive of what you want, you don't have to attach to things and you can trust it, right? You can be open to how is this going to come in when you can release control. And I realize this is a hard thing to do if people have been doing this for such a large part of their life. And when I work one-on-one with people, we really dig into what for that particular person is going to work with them being able to release control or attachment to things. But we really can't control anything. And when we're trying to do that, it is our ego getting in the way, right? An ego, it's not a great thing, honestly. When you can just release all of the thoughts, ideas about how things are supposed to go and just be in the present, right? This is very, very, very hard for people. And I know because it took me a long time to gain presence in my life. When you can start to get very present, ego doesn't come into the picture because you are not constantly thinking about what's going to happen or what has happened. You're just being, right? You're just being in the moment. You're just being your most authentic self without all of these thoughts coming in that disrupt your ability to be neutral and just be who you are, your most authentic self, so that the things that you want can come into you. And I recognize that being your most authentic self is hard. That's what everyone is really striving to get to. But if you spend more time in the present moment, that's a far easier thing to attain. Because the more present you are in your own body without all of the thoughts, the easier it becomes to move through life and the less you have going up here that's telling you, don't do things this way, do things this way, or you have to be attached to this. People get really attached to identities and who they're supposed to be, right? And that's a very ego-driven thought process. Like, I have to be this person, right? And I was very much in this space when I was transitioning from being a lawyer to working as more of a spiritual guide or coach, right? I had attached so strongly to the identity of being a lawyer and what that gave me or what I thought that gave me that I was kind of embarrassed about what people would think of me if I didn't have that anymore, which is so silly. Nobody cares. And if they do, they're not your people. And that's a whole different topic, right? But the less attached that you are to outcomes. Like, I would encourage you, think about something in your life right now that you really want to happen. Right. And it doesn't have to be something huge. It could be at work. Maybe you want, maybe you want to start exercising more, or you want to just start doing something different in your life. Maybe you want to start meditating, maybe you want to meet a new friend. You want to find a romantic partner. Is there something that you're wanting to do in your life? And really get clear on what it is that you want, and trying not to have this feeling of attachment. And you have to be in your body to do that, because you have to feel it, right? When you are attached to something, you can feel it. There's this energetic pull where you're like, nothing else can come my way but this. I call it like wobbly energy, right? It doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel safe. It's like really tense. And it's like, this is how things have to go. If you just are like, okay, this is something I really want to happen in my life, and I'm going to focus on it, but I'm not going to be so attached to it that I won't let it happen in any other ways. And by the way, I'm kind of closing my eyes off and on, because that's how, for me, I get very in my body, right? If it were me, I would sit down and be like, okay, when I think about this thing I want, how do I feel? I am going to focus on achieving this thing or getting this thing without being attached to the outcome. Like, I want this to happen, but I'm not attached to it. And I am open to all of the ways that it can come into my life, right? And letting your body get to a place where it feels safe. It may take you some time to do that, right? You're not going to probably do this exercise once and be like, okay, I'm not attached. That it takes practice. All of this stuff takes practice. All of this mindset work takes practice. Being present takes practice, right? But I guarantee that if you are to sit and be present without all of the thoughts running, constantly racing through your mind, and just say, this is something I really want in my life, but I am open to all of the ways that it can come in, and I am open to the way that the universe wants to bring it into my life in the most easy, joyful way possible. And you get just very much in telling yourself that over and over again, right? That could be like a daily affirmation. You are going to start to feel a difference in your body. And that's what you want, because when your body feels safe, then the things that you truly want can start to come to you. You start with your mind and then feel how it changes you in your body. And again, for one person, this may take 5 times. For another person, this may take 100 times, right? It's going to be practice. And these are things that you're going to want to keep doing over and over and over again, right? Like, practice, gets you to where you want to be, no matter what it is that you're doing. Like, if you wanted to gain muscle, you're not going to go to the gym one time and lift weights and then be like, okay, well, it didn't do anything, right? Practice, keep doing it. If you're like, I don't feel anything right away, keep doing it. Like, it may take you a couple months. I don't know, right? But just do it and be like, I know that if I want this thing, I'm going to get it, and I'm not going to be attached to the how. And it will make a very big difference in not only your belief about how things have to go, but just being willing to release control. You don't have control over anything but yourself, your thoughts, and how you respond. But everything else around you, you don't have control over it, except for how you think about it and how you perceive it, right? And so when you can really dig into changing your thoughts about dictating how everything has to happen and the only ways that things can come into your life, when you can release that, you're going to feel completely differently. I will tell you, because I know it. I was trying to control everything my whole life. Now I don't want to, because I know how badly it feels in my body. So I hope that you try it. Good luck. Thank you so much for joining me during this episode. I hope you have an amazing day.
Hey, before you go, would you love to receive my 3-step masterclass to easily create and hold wealth for free? It's called Effortless Money, and it includes the exact framework to start attracting money effortlessly and manifesting abundance with more ease. If you want it for free, all you have to do is leave an honest review of the Wealth Embodied podcast, take a screenshot of this episode and put it in your Instagram stories and tag me at Brianna_Faringer, and we will send you the free Effortless Money Masterclass. This is how my clients have manifested a $13,000 check, a promotion resulting in a $30,000 salary increase, and significantly improved relationships. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time on the Wealth Embodied podcast.